Hello, my name is Yvette Beale, and I am the Director of Human Resources at Level 2 Legal of our Diversity and Inclusion Initiative. We are honored to partner with Sylvia and the Bilingual Council to produce Moving the Needle, what the legal industry can do to improve diversity and inclusion. Today, I am super excited to be joined by Joel Stern, the CEO of NAMWOLF, which is the country's leading professional association for law firms owned by minorities and women. They serve as a trusted networking resource connecting corporate law departments with qualified minority and women-owned law firms. Joel has been actively involved with NAMWOLF since 2006 and has been the CEO since 2014. We are super excited to hear his perspective shared with us today. Joel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Yvette, and thank you for having me, and Bilingual Council, thank you for having me as well. I'm excited to talk about diversity and inclusion in the legal profession.
Great. Well, thank you. I would very much like to start by taking it back to January of 2019, when over 170 general counsels signed an open letter to big law firms, demanding firms to commit to diversity and inclusion. What type of impact have you seen since the signing of that letter?
It's a great question, Yvette, because for some of us who've been passionate about diversity and inclusion since I became a lawyer way back in 1984, we've seen calls to actions before. And the frustration that many of us have is they are calls to action without action. So when we saw the effort that came out in January of 2019, we were hopeful, because anytime you're talking about it, it's a great first step. But we wanted to see actions associated with the words. And I was really happy to see that those that led the effort basically took a second step. They drilled down, they peeled the onion back that I had never seen before others do, and they put tactical things that both in-house legal groups and law firms should do to move the needle. Now, when you ask me empirically if I can tell you whether or not that's been successful or not, I think it takes a few years for that data to show. The buzz about diversity and inclusion is out there more than I've ever seen before. And I've seen that with both law firms and in-house counsel. So I'm excited, I am optimistic, but I'm not a Pollyanna. And we have to look at the metrics to see if we're really making the success that we all hope to occur.
Understandable. So you mentioned the tactical goals and initiatives that have been set to include diversity and inclusion. So what are some strategic goals that you've heard of in the industry that organizations are doing to really push diversity and inclusion, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years?
So when you look at diversity and inclusion efforts in the legal profession, you have to look at it from different pillars. And the best-in-class law firms and corporations that are doing this look at it from 4 different perspectives. One, you can't tell other people what to do unless you're doing those things yourself. So what does my legal group look like? What are the metrics? Where are they at all levels? So don't tell me I have 50% women and 23% minorities when that's all at the bottom level of the law firm or corporation. Show me what those folks look like at all levels, at the associate level, at the non-equity partner level, at the equity partner level. In a corporation, show me where they exist, the leadership elements of the corporation. Do you have a diversity and inclusion legal committee? Is it inclusive? Or are the only people that are part of that committee 35 and under and minority and or women? Because I love affinity groups, but inclusion solves. Affinity groups help create an affinity towards the problem, but you need to bring everybody together to actually solve. The second area is, what are we doing with big law? And the metrics that need to come out of the call to action is, are we getting work at all levels from different people, from women, from minorities, from LGBT? Are we making sure that the person that brought in our business is getting origination credit rather than the person who historically 25 years ago had some nexus to get my business? Are we looking at the client relationship partners we have with big law to make sure that they're not all white male and look like and act like me? The third area is pipeline diversity. Do we have goals and a set of metrics associated with changing the world in which we live in? And I personally think that the pipeline is the most important thing that we can do in our profession, and is probably the only panacea to what ails this profession. But pipeline is more than just helping young lawyers. It's helping law students. It's helping college students. It's helping high schools. And it's even starting with 5th, 6th, and 7th graders to get minorities and women excited about the legal profession. And then the fourth element, which is one that I'm very close to, is supplier diversity and the metrics associated with that. What are we doing as part of that call to action to make sure that we're making sure that a percentage of our business is going to qualified minority and women-owned law firms? Corporations and law firms that look at it from that perspective, that are creating metrics and goals and measuring them, have a much better success of turning this call to action into something real.
Thank you, Joel. Those are very good best practices, very good points that you made. One thing that really stood out to me is the fact of supporting those minority-owned businesses as our vendors, as our clients, and really incorporating them into our business model. And then also what really stood out to me is also having the diversity on every level of the organization, not just the entry-level positions, but also promoting from within and having career pathing for everyone equally. So you shared a lot about how organizations can incorporate diversity and inclusion, as well as shared a lot of great best practices. Another question that I have for you is, it focuses more on our communities today and what's going on in our social economic stance. How should organizations respond to the worldwide cry for justice and reform that's currently affecting a lot of the minority businesses and minorities in general?
It's a great question. I'm not sure I can do it justice in just a few minutes, but I'll give it a try. Number one, do not stay silent. Silence is unacceptable. And the folks that speak cannot only be minorities and women, they have to be the majority. And we have to understand the notion of privilege. And we don't brag about being privileged, and we're not upset about it because it is what it is. But once we understand that we have certain steps ahead of what other people do, we look at the world differently, and we want to bring other people up. So the concept of privilege is critical. The notion and understanding that all lives can't matter until Black lives matter is something we all have to speak to. And we have to understand that Black lives matter and all lives matter are not binary. When the Boston Marathon Massacre occurred and we heard Boston Strong, nobody said, what about Cleveland? What about Chicago? We knew there was a problem, we knew there were issues, and we focused on Boston. It should surprise nobody that there is inequality today in our legal profession and in our country as it relates to African Americans. And they deserve a special focus, because until we figure out how to treat them equally, we cannot as a country and as a legal profession be equal. So what I am seeing, and again, I am optimistic, is I am seeing and reading statements from people that have not spoken before and from corporations that have stayed silent, saying no more. We have got to be better. And we've got to put programs in place that are not only there during good times, but are there during bad times to actually solve. And again, what I've seen the last few months, I can tell you personally, Yvette, that I'm getting more phone calls and more inquiries from corporations and general counsels and corporations that are asking, how do we get more involved with NAMWOLF? Can you explain to me what a best-in-class diversity inclusion legal program? So there's a little bit of optimism that I have that we've hit a tipping point. But again, I understand the cynicism because we've seen and heard this before, but never to this magnitude.
Yes. Well, thank you, Joel. I truly appreciate you taking time to be with me today. The best practices that you have shared, your perspective on the community, and the passion that you have behind it all is phenomenal. So it's been a meeting with you. If there's anything else that you would like to add from a community or organizational perspective regarding diversity and inclusion, we would love to hear from you now. Do you have anything additional to add?
Sure, Yvette. The only thing, I get the privilege of speaking and talking to a lot of different groups about this subject. I would challenge, I love takeaways. and I have a simple takeaway from the thousands of people that are going to be listening to this, is challenge yourself to do 10 things tomorrow that you're not doing today in the diversity and inclusion field. And I'll give you just a few that I'm doing. One, I am reaching out to Blacks in the legal profession and listening to their stories, and I'm not saying a word. You know, my mother taught me years ago, I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should listen twice as much as you speak. And I violated that rule my entire life, and now I'm listening. And all I'm saying is I understand. I am reaching out to historically Black college, universities, and law schools, to kids that have to climb mountains that I've never even seen, and trying to tell them that I am here to help them. I am donating money to groups that are fighting for equality of justice, including the Southern Poverty Legal Center and the NAACP. I am mentoring more people than I've ever mentored before. And one of the things that I'm doing that I probably didn't do as well as I could have done is I am not allowing microaggressions to occur. When I see things, even though they may appear benign, but that have an impact on minorities and women, I am speaking up, and I will no longer tolerate that. Imagine if all of us pick 10 things that we're going to do differently tomorrow. We'd be in such a better position.
Absolutely. That is the perfect takeaway. Thank you so much for sharing that information. And now I'm going to think of 10 things that I can do differently personally as well, from a professional and personal perspective. So thank you, Joel, for your time and for sharing your perspective with the Buy-in Legal Counsel in this initiative. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Yvette.